If you've decided to take the journey this year and grow your own peppers right from seed, first off, kudos to you. It's a rewarding endeavor that's going to allow you to grow more peppers than you know what to do with. And while most of us around the world have already planted and sprouted our pepper plants for the year, it's still too cold to bring them outside and plant them in the garden. Instead, our focus for the next 2 to 6 weeks, depending on where you live, is to grow these pepper seedlings up into the largest, most robust starter plants possible. So if you followed along in part 1 and you've already planted your pepper seeds for the year, strap in and let's get these guys where they need to be so that we can get them ready to plant in our spring garden. If you haven't checked out part 1 of this pepper growing series and you've yet to plant your seeds this year, don't fret. There's still time. Visit the first video here and get those seeds into some soil and you can catch up in no time. There's 2 burning questions that have been asked many times before. Why start something like peppers from seed? And if you do, why start them so early indoors? I've answered it many times in the past, but I still get asked multiple times a day. So let's answer those 2 questions before we dive in. First up, we grow peppers from seeds for 2 reasons. The first is cost, or more accurately, cost savings. Pepper seeds are literally pennies a piece. And if you already have the containers and soil, you can start hundreds and hundreds of pepper seedlings compared to buying just a couple of starter plants. The other reason is variety. While your local nursery or garden center may carry 1 to 2 or even 3 varieties of pepper plants, growing from your own seed opens up the endless possibility of virtually every pepper variety known to man. Since all pepper types are pretty much grown in identical fashion, once you've grown one, you can grow them all. And with seeds, you actually have that choice. As for why we start our peppers early indoors, that has 2 reasons as well. The first being, for growers like me in temperate climates, our summer season is simply not long enough to support the pepper plants all the way to maturity. That is, there just aren't enough warm days to obtain viable fruit from a pepper plant that's been direct seeded into my garden in a month like May. This head start is critical to actually growing the crop successfully in the first place. And second, the oversowing of so many seeds early on allows us to choose the best individual plants possible. Because we can then cherry pick the premium specimens, we can be assured that we're growing the best crop. So with that in mind, and obviously our pepper plants advancing like crazy now, let's move them on and 1 step closer to the starting rotation in our garden. As you will remember, to start our pepper seeds initially, we made a low nutrient, very light fine mixture designed for germination. In essence, a seeding mix. This has served our seedlings well, obviously, but as we move them on to larger pots and containers, we need to give them some extra nutrients. And for that, we have 2 options. Amend that potting mix that we use to plant these guys up, or apply a liquid fertilizer to get these guys fed later. Both methods work equally as well, and I'll show them both to you here today. What it really boils down to is personal preference. Either way, the seedlings have grown substantially, and they do need to be moved on to larger containers. So let's look at amending the soil first, as we're going to need to do the soil no matter what. As you've likely seen, pepper seedlings grow fast, and they need to be moved on to larger containers about 2 to 3 weeks after germination. We need to move them on to keep up with their growth and keep that upwards trajectory. Regular store-bought potting mix is perfectly fine, and it's readily available, especially right now. You can also make your own potting mix with about 50% coconut fiber and 50% compost. Add in a few sprinkles of perlite for aeration, and you're good to go. Either way, if you're choosing the amendment route for your pepper nutrition, now is the time to do it. I like to amend my potting mixes not only to supercharge them, but also to ensure that everything I pot up, including these baby peppers, is fertilized evenly and safely. In my mind, a little goes a long way, and these slow-release dry ingredients are just what the doctor ordered. I mainly use just 3 ingredients, but the choices are many, so don't be afraid to experiment. My first amendment and a go-to staple is alfalfa meal, either in the form of meal or powder or in the pellets. Next, I'll add in some rock phosphate. And finally, I'll mix in some Epsom salts. Each one of these additives does different things, but what I like most is that they're granular. They're slow release and they'll never burn my plants. Now, if you're in the mood to get a little crazy or crazier, you can really create that ultimate concoction by adding these 3 items as well: bone meal, seaweed powder, and rock dust. You don't need much, maybe a teaspoon or so per 5 gallons, but what a way to supercharge a soil. As mentioned, mix in the combined amendments to about 10% of your total volume of soil, and be rest assured that you don't need to fertilize your peppers until well into spring, possibly longer. These amendments can be added to both your store-bought mix and your DIY mix. I add them at a ratio of about 10% total combined amendments. Just mix it in thoroughly, and that's it. Your peppers are now fed until they're planted out in the garden, 4 to 6 weeks from now, and likely a little bit beyond. The other method of fertilizing our young peppers is to liquid feed them with an organic solution, usually a seaweed extract. But let's first replant our young pepper seedlings into larger pots, and then we'll look at how I liquid feed. As you remember, about 2 to 3 weeks ago, we first planted our pepper seeds in these wonderful 1020 plug trays. Under optimal conditions of about 85 degrees Fahrenheit and high humidity, they germinated quickly. Once the first true leaves appeared around day 12 to 14, we removed that clear cover for better airflow, and we took them off the supplemental heat. And now at day 32, they're ready for a new home. My go-to size immediately after the plugs is the standard 4-inch nursery pots. I use these guys because they're universal. They fit the 1020 trays just perfectly. I fill these pots all the way to the top with that aforementioned soil mix, compress them down about 20%, and then top them off nice and level. The tendency would be to plant right away, but hold off. Let's soak those pots and that soil from below for about 2 hours. About 2 liters of water should do the trick. Peppers transplant really well and are quite bulletproof at this stage, but it's just good practice to pre-soak that soil first. You really want to facilitate that transition to a new pot size and ease any chances of transplant shock. Actual planting is super easy. I simply make a hole slightly bigger than the pepper plugs, usually with a screwdriver. Pry that plant out of the cell and then pop that plug all the way down up to the first note of leads if possible. Being a nightshade, peppers are best planted as deep as they can go, as they'll actually send out roots right from their stems. These adventitious roots will increase the available root systems of those young pepper plants in short order, boosting their viability, toughness, and of course their overall growth rate. Even though we're cherry picking the best specimens along the way, this act of burying that stem as far as it'll go will have an even greater impact on maximizing that pepper crop. Go through all the seedlings, picking out the best ones, planting them as deep as they'll go. The seed leaves that first appeared right after germination can also be removed, allowing us to plant those peppers even further down. If you remember from part 1, we actually seeded our peppers in 2 different ways. Single seeded, like these guys here, and of course multi-seeded like these ones, where we save space and resources by planting multiple seeds within a single cell. As you can see, planting the single plug peppers is quite straightforward and pretty easy. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what to do with the multi-seeded ones. Use that flathead screwdriver to dig out the plug like you normally would with the single seeded ones, but gently pry apart those pepper seedlings by the soil or the roots. Do not tug on those stems to separate them. They will bend and they will break. Just gently pull from the soil ball and they'll separate quite easily. Try to keep as much of the root system per plant intact as possible. Once separated, plant those plugs just as you would normally, carrying on, finishing off the tray. At this point, you probably want to tame down your number of overall peppers close to the number of total plants you're going to want in your garden this year. With the advanced stage that these guys are at right now, not only are all these plants going to survive, they're likely going to become premium specimens. Hey, before we wrap up, let's not forget about that liquid feeding that we talked about before. There's a zillion liquid fertilizers out there, making the choices staggering. What I can tell you is, you're going to want to look for a balanced fertilizer designed for vegetative growth. I usually find these in the form of a kelp or seaweed extract. And I make my solutions quite weak, usually about 50 to 60% of the recommended dosage. Water the solution into your pots from below about a week or so after you replanted them, and repeat this every 2 weeks until you're ready to transplant them out into the garden. Both fertilizing methods should get you to the same result, so you do you, and work with what fits best for your situation and your budget. Mastering the art of timing that first pepper seeding, but also the moving on of those young plants at a key transition stage, is an acquired skill that may take a few seasons. It's a worthwhile endeavor, and it'll get you to the same stage that you'd be buying your pepper starts at the store for far cheaper. Whichever route you choose, growing these guys up for another 4 weeks, or, buying your pepper starts in a month or so, you're going to be ready for video number 3. In part 3 of this pepper series, we finally take our peppers out into the garden for final planting, do some maintenance, and eventually the summer harvest. Your nighttime low has to be at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit before you can even think of taking these peppers outside. So, up here in Canada, I got a ways to go. I don't mind though. I really enjoy caring for and growing these guys inside. Regardless, stay tuned for that one in about a month or so. And hey, if you have any other advanced pepper growing tips that you'd love to share with the community, leave it in the comments down below. Oh wait, you probably wanted that recap, hey? Here we go. We started our peppers 8 to 10 weeks before our last spring frost. They germinated fast within a week. But they can't go out into the garden until the nighttime lows are above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So, everything we discussed here today is about growing the biggest, best pepper starts imaginable. Take your seedlings off the heat if you haven't already, and plant them into larger pots once they have 2 sets of true leaves. While the seeding mix was fairly nutrient-free, now is the time when your pepperlings need some food. Either amend the potting soil or liquid feed moderately, your choice. Keep your newly potted pepper plants between 60 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit and give them as much light as possible. Spring is coming. Also, if any of you are on Facebook, head on over and join our gardening group called Growing Better. The group has grown phenomenally fast, yet it will never lose its sense of community or its welcoming feel. If you're passionate about growing epic organic fruits, herbs, and veggies for you and your family, the Growing Better group is a great place to hang out, share, learn, and grow. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you're getting value in this and the other series that I'm doing on YouTube, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons if you'd be so kind, and I'll see you in the next video.